Hey guys, what's up? How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another MLB DFS Slurve video here on YouTube, here at No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Today is Tuesday, September 1st, 2020. Pretty crazy to say we are already into September. What does that mean for baseball, for MLB? We're almost 3/4 of the way through the season, so kind of wrapping things up here with this shortened MLB season, but we are just a couple of weeks, actually under 2 weeks away from kickoff of the first NFL game for the 2020 season. So that's all exciting, man. We're going to be putting out NFL DFS content here on the channel very shortly. So stay tuned for that. Join us with the NFL DFS season. It's going to be an exciting one. But tonight we're talking specifically the DFS MLB main slate, both FanDuel and DraftKings. But specifically, as always, we're going to jump into the FanDuel app here. So for all you DraftKings players, sorry about that. The analysis, everything should still apply, so hang in there with me. But in general, the pricing will be different, obviously. We're building lineups through this FanDuel app. And in tonight's slate, we have 12 total games available to us, so a larger slate than yesterday. In terms of an outlook, in terms of rain, there doesn't seem to be too many weather concerns. I would say the Tampa Bay at New York Yankees game is showing some rain in the Chicago-Pittsburgh game. Very, very small amount there. And then the Cleveland-Kansas City game also showing a little. Now, this is early on, so it's up to you guys to pay attention, see how these things play out through the day. We don't have all Vegas lines. We don't obviously have lineups out yet, and then weather can and will change as we get closer. So, again, up to you guys to pay attention to that. In general, the slate is it's larger than yesterday. That's pretty much the only thing that's different. Outside of that, you have a game in Colorado. So again, San Francisco playing Colorado. We're going to have to consider either fading that game, playing bats from that game, stacking that game. A lot of important things with a high projected total game, as always. I will say overall, though, the slate kind of sucks. It's a bleak slate overall. Even though there's 12 games, you have a number of great spots to pick bats from. I think tonight will be a ton of runs being scored across the board, but there are not very many pitchers. There's only one real ace-style, elite-style pitcher, not in a great spot. We'll talk about him in general. Outside of that, it's a lot of washed-up pitchers, a lot of guys just not pitching very well on the 2020 season. So you're going to have to navigate tonight. I think pitching is very, very key to tonight's success. Outside of that, like I mentioned, you have a ton of runs projected on the night. In fact, looking at it here, we have 6 teams projected above 5 runs on the night. That's Houston, Milwaukee, Dodgers, Chicago Cubs, Atlanta, Cleveland. And that does not include Colorado, San Francisco. Both those teams surely will be above 5 runs on the night, if not 6. That line for that game, Vegas totals are not out yet. And then also there's no line out or Vegas totals for the Baltimore-New York Mets game. So I suspect the Mets will also be above 5, to be perfectly honest with you. You're talking 7 or 8 total teams above 5 runs on the night. That's a lot. That's a lot compared to other nights. So it should be exciting in terms of runs scored. I just don't know about pitching. But let's talk about pitching on the other side of the coin here. There are 4 teams below 4 runs on the night. That's Washington, Kansas City, Arizona, and Texas. So something to consider there in terms of picking pitchers, which teams are below 4. You have 4 of them available. That being said, let's jump into pitching. Where are we headed tonight? What are we talking about? Well, for pitching, you can see here right at the top, we're talking Aaron Nola at $10,200. Most expensive pitcher on the slate, one of the best pitchers in all of baseball, but obviously the best pitcher in general on the slate tonight. Now, will you play him? In my opinion, I think you have to. You don't have very many spots to go to tonight. He is pitching at home. He is a favorite at -150, so you check 2 boxes there. You should get the win. Hopefully we'll get a quality start. Now, he's playing Washington. Washington on the road. You can be scared of that Washington lineup. I can completely understand with your Juan Sotos, your Cabreras, switch hitters. There's a lot of power, a lot of dangerous weapons in that Washington lineup. But if we go back to last week, he did face Washington in Washington. Nola here went 7 innings, had 8 strikeouts, only gave up 2 earned, and had a win and a quality start. So you could get something easily similar to that tonight. Very, very solid numbers there, almost 50 FanDuel points. If you can get that again tonight, I don't think there's very many pitchers that have come close to that. $10,200 is not that bad of a price, in my opinion. We're hoping he gets 50. You kind of want that 5X on a pitcher on FanDuel. Will he get that? Hopefully. We'll see. Maybe give up less runs, but it's very hard to get anything better than he did against Washington as he did last Wednesday. But he gets an at-home advantage here, so we'll see how that plays out. Now, he is projected 7 Ks on the night, a solid number there. Washington is not that dangerous versus righties. They're not bad, but they're not super dangerous, nothing to be really fearful of. They have a 100 WRC+, that's 15th overall, middle of the pack, 324 WOBA, that's 11th overall, 165 ISO, that's 18th overall, and then the only downside is they strike out 20% of the time, which is actually pretty low. That's 28th overall in baseball, meaning they don't strike out a lot. So again, 7 Ks projected for him. That's a decently healthy number. Hopefully we get that. I think he is your safest option, especially in cash games, on the board tonight. Now keep in mind, if you're a tournament player like myself, he's going to garnish a lot of ownership. I'm not willing to go super away from him though. You're just going to have to differentiate with stacks and bats. Now, there's other guys below him available. You have Valdez, who's pitched absolutely excellent so far this season for Houston in a cake matchup versus Texas. You can see here 5 straight games over 40 points. Really excellent, but his peripherals, his numbers, his advanced metrics, they don't really support what he's doing right now. So I do suspect some regression is coming. Will it come against Texas at home? I don't think so. I mean, Texas, like I said, is a cake matchup. The only thing I see here, though, is he's $300 away from NOLA. So I'm just going to, I don't know how you can't get there, but $300, you should be able to get back up to NOLA, and that's what I'll be doing. And if Valdez, for whatever reason, does start to regress tonight, you don't really suffer. I think he's too expensive at nearly $10,000. Same deal here with Plesak. He's almost $10,000. Most nights, most slates, you take him. But the downside here is he's on the road, and number 2 is he's probably on a pitch count limit, simply because you can see here he hasn't pitched since early August. He got in trouble with Cleveland for a COVID issue. Then they sent him to extended spring training, whatever they call that camp. So he's probably pitched there. But I can't imagine he gets a normal like 90, 100 pitch limit or pitch, length in general. So again, I'm staying away from him because he's only $500 away from NOLA, and Plesak likely will be limited tonight in pitching. Now, a couple other guys I want to mention really quickly. I am liking Ian Anderson tonight, but similar to last night with Fried, it is very similar to what is that Boston lineup going to look like. They hopefully will be without JD Martinez again. That's a huge plus. They did trade away Mitch Moreland, a lefty. That's a huge plus. Bogarts has not been hitting well. That's a plus. The only downside is Devers has been crushing the ball. He's a lefty, so he gets that left on right matchup here. He is pitching on the road in Boston, not the most favorable pitcher's park, and he's $9,000, which is a little high. But this kid's a rookie. He's young. He pitched very, very well in his first start versus New York Yankees. 6 innings, gave up 1 earned, got the quality start, the W. He had 6 strikeouts. He has shown the potential to have high K in the minor leagues. Will that translate? We have yet to see. But he was about a 30% strikeout guy in the minor leagues, which is very, very good. In Boston, like I mentioned, their lineup is depleted. They're trading away players. If he can just kind of navigate around Devers, hopefully we'll be without Martinez. All good things here. The one big advantage I will say for him is Atlanta is actually a favorite. I think it was like 158 or 160 road favorite here. So again, that's a good thing for him. Hopefully he can get that quality start, that W. Shown the ability to go long. There isn't a pitch limit on him. I think he hit 90 pitches in his first start. So all good things there. Again, $9,000 saves you about $1,200 off of NOLA. Hopefully will be lesser owned. I think he's going to be one of the highest overall fantasy point pitchers on the night. So all good things here in a slate that does not have many pitchers. The last thing I will say here is Boston is not very good versus right-handed pitching. They have a 94 WRC+, which is bottom 10 in the league. They have a 316 WOBA, which is 16th overall, 177 ISO, which is 15th, and they're striking out 25% of the time, which is 10th overall in baseball. So they're top 10 in strikeouts, and then this guy's projected 7 Ks on the night. That's tied with NOLA today. So all good things here. I think he's in a good spot. You can be afraid because he's a rookie, but I think on tonight's slate, if you're trying to take some risk, you can go with Ian Anderson. The only other guy I'm considering and I'm not committed completely to yet is Sean Manaea. He's $7,400, and that's kind of the reason why. He is pitching on the road against Seattle, so he pitches for Oakland. He's a lefty. $7,400 saves you a ton of money, and if you're really interested in Colorado or you're really interested in San Francisco tonight, you're gonna have to find some savings, and you can find a lot here, in my opinion. Now, he has pitched kind of up and down. He's coming off a 27 point performance, 5 innings, 3 Ks, 1 earned versus Texas. I mean, that's not the greatest in my opinion. Well, I mean, it's anybody's opinion, really. I mean, 27 points, we need more than that. But he showed 30. He doesn't strike out a lot of guys. That's kind of the downside here. But the Seattle team is just awful versus left-handed pitching. In fact, they're dead last. I think their WRC plus is like 65 overall, which is dead last in baseball. And they're a top 5 team in strikeouts. So the team he's facing is cake. He's on the road. Seattle's a pitcher's park, in my opinion. I think it's a good spot. If you need to save money and want to take a chance, I won't be doing a lot of it, but I will be considering him, especially depending on how that Seattle lineup comes out. I think it's a cake matchup for a guy that's relatively cheap on the slate. And so that's my pitching thoughts on the night. Really 3 guys, possibly only 2 in consideration. Let's talk stacks here. The first stack I want to mention, the New York Mets. Now, I did mention earlier we do not have a line out for them in terms of Vegas runs projected, but I fully suspect that they will be above 5 on the night simply because of who they're facing. So they're facing Wojciechowski. Always butchered this kid's name, Asher. The kid's not very good. He literally lights up my cheat sheet in terms of everything you want to attack. The 2 big things I will mention, his xFIP is first lefties and righties sits above 5, and his home runs per 9 for lefties and righties, 2.24 for lefties, 1.76 for righties. So he's getting hit hard by lefties and righties. His xFIP is not supporting he's a good pitcher at all. All good things here for the Mets. Now, he is slightly worse versus lefties. You can take both lefties and righties against him, but in my opinion, you can go with kind of a heavy lefty lineup here, and that's what the New York Mets give you. So you have your Nemo, you have your Smith, who's hitting 4th, and your Conforto, all good left-handed bats for them. The downside is these guys the New York Mets are gonna eat up your outfield. Whether you're playing DraftKings or FanDuel, these guys are all listed as outfielders, so that kind of sucks from that perspective. But Robinson Cano, second baseman here, $3,500. He's been absolutely great this season. 375 with 6 home runs on the season. Now, he's been injured. He hasn't played a ton, but in my opinion, he's having a great season. The other thing I will mention here is if you want to go with a righty, Alonso's obviously a powerful right-handed bat. And then last but not least here, the third guy I will mention is McNeil. Depending on where he's at in the lineup, he can get you a lot of value at $2,500. Now, if he's hitting 7, 8, or 9, nah, I'm not interested. But if he's hitting higher in the order, potentially. The good thing is here, the Mets, honest to God, could line up, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 of 9 bats could be lefties versus this Asher kid. I think it's a troublesome spot for him. Now, he has not given up a ton of runs, meaning 3 or 4 runs per start, but he doesn't last long. He only lasts 3 or 4 innings. So we get into a bullpen. The bullpen is not very good for Baltimore, in my opinion. I've looked up their stats, their xFIP, their Sierras, all kind of bottom tier team. So again, all good things here, even if we get into the bullpen. The last thing I will mention, the Mets are one of the best teams overall versus right-handed pitching. In fact, 121 WRC plus is 3rd overall in baseball, 3rd best. 345 WOBA is 4th best in baseball. Their ISO is down a little at 170, that's 16th overall, and they're only striking out at 21.7% of the time. So they're not striking out a lot, and they're hitting the ball well versus right-handed pitching. I like the Mets as my number 1 stack. I'll back the Mets up here, and I could go either way. I'm talking either Cleveland or Atlanta. Both, I think, teams are in great spots here. So let's start with the Atlanta Braves here. Now, actually, if FanDuel screwed up here, they have Kyle Hart listed, the left-hander for Boston starting tonight. I don't know if that's changing or what, or if that's actually the case. Either way, if it's him or if it's the guy that I think is starting, which is Ryan Weber, I don't know if we can actually even find him. Both guys are terrible. It doesn't matter. Yeah, Ryan Weber. He is not very good. 6 ERA. You can see here has been a bullpen guy here and there. Just nothing really exciting. Either way, he's the right-hander or you go the left-hander. You want to focus more on lefties if it's Weber, in my opinion. So I like Freeman here. You have a ton of lefties like Markakis, who offers value. Inciarte, who offers value. And then, and that's really, I mean, that's kind of their lefty lineup. But if it's the other way around, so if you're playing, which would be Hart, I would still stick with Freeman, in my opinion. I think he's in a good spot even versus a lefty. And keep in mind, it doesn't really matter because both these guys, whoever's starting for Boston, you're going to end up into the bullpen within the 4th or 5th inning. So, again, it doesn't really matter. Freeman in a ballpark that favors left-handed power, sign me up all day. He's kind of the staple there. But other guys that are in great spots. So Adam Duvall hit a home run last night. He's a great guy for the left on right, or in his case, he's facing a lefty. So I do like him a lot. Should be hitting higher in the order. You could go at the top of the order here at shortstop with Swanson. Typically gets you that right on left matchup, but he does hit righties very well, so don't be afraid of that. You have Ozuna, which is going to eat up another first baseman spot, which kind of stinks, but in an excellent spot. Only really like him if they're facing that lefty in Hart. So again, you're just going to have to pay attention. But the last guy I will mention here, and this is really dependent upon how much I like this lineup. If Acuna is in the lineup, I really love them tonight, but we're just going to have to see how that plays out. They kind of bump down to my third or fourth favorite stack if he's not in the lineup tonight. But again, make sure you pay attention. It's either going to be Hart or Weber. It's either a really bad lefty or a really bad righty. Depending on how the lineup comes out, you want to go more lefty bats or more righty bats. Either way, really like the Atlanta Braves tonight. The other stack I want to mention here, a lot of people are probably going to be on this one, but Matt Harvey is facing Cleveland tonight at home. This is likely Matt Harvey's last attempt to stay, I would say, in MLB, but definitely with the Kansas City Royals here. You can see he just has not been good. He's given up a ton of runs in just a few short innings. He gives them no length. He basically serves no purpose in that rotation. So I do want to attack him tonight. I think a road team like Cleveland is in a great spot. The downside, the only reason I don't really like the Cleveland Indians as much as I should, and the only reason they're not my number one team, is they have not hit actually left-handed, or they have not hit right-handed pitchers very well on the season, which is surprising with your Ramirez's and your Lindors, but I do really like them still nonetheless. So you're talking Lindor, Ramirez, Santana, your kind of big bats there, but your Nyquin is in a good spot, gives you a lefty. In general, if you're talking Harvey is not good. He lights up, again, my cheat sheet, just like that Asher kid. He leads the slate in WOBA versus lefties and righties, 399 to lefties, 354 to righties. He leads the slate in XFIP to lefties, 578 to righties, 524, both number one on the slate. Gives up a ton of home runs, 1.82 to lefties and 2.27 to righties. So don't be afraid to take righties, but these switch hitters like Lindor and Ramirez's, your Santanas, all are basically absolutes. They have to be in your lineup, in my opinion, but you can go a number of different ways. Like I mentioned, these are kind of the four most favorable guys, in my opinion, for this matchup. But attack Matt Harvey. That's kind of the bottom line here. And Kansas City's bullpen on top of that is not very good. So even if you get into that, the other downside is Kansas City favors more pitching than anything. So that's kind of why I see them as my number 3 stack on the slate right now. So we're going to see how it plays out. Again, a lot of stuff still has to come out later in the day, but make sure you know Cleveland in a great spot versus Matt Harvey. Now, the only other thing I think we need to mention here in terms of stacks is whether or not you want to play the San Francisco game versus Colorado. So the Rockies versus the Giants. You can see here you have John Gray on the mound and you have Kevin Gausman on the mound. Both guys, I don't know what to say. They're kind of polar opposites at this point. John Gray, in my opinion, has always been, and hopefully still is, an underrated pitcher. So he pitched really good in Arizona. We started him, in fact, in that game. I mentioned him in my video. Really liked him in that spot. And he's pitched really well once at home this season, and that was against Texas, where he had 7 Ks in 7 innings, got the win, got the quality start. Am I suggesting playing him? Absolutely not. I'm just saying he's kind of up and down. His fastball, the speed on his fastball is down, which is concerning. It was up in his last start, so again, we don't really know. The season's weird. It's a young season, but in general, he gets hit heavy and hard by lefties, especially when he's pitching at home. I'm willing to attack him. Maybe not my favorite stack in San Francisco, but I'm willing to get definitely exposure to that San Francisco lineup. Now, Kevin Gausman, on the other hand, has pitched really well this season, but he's a guy that career-wise does not have the greatest stats. So it's kind of the opposite. I suspect kind of what I'm saying is Gray to positively regress and Gausman to negatively regress. Am I willing to take Colorado bats? I don't know. They've been really letting us down. They struggle in general, left and right, all season long. It's just it's a mess there in Colorado. So I don't know how that'll play out. But in general, if I had to pick, I would take the San Francisco bats, starting first and foremost with Brandon Belt. I think he's in a great spot. I like Alex Dickerson. I think he's gives you that left on right. Both those guys do. Will Brandon Crawford be in the lineup? I'm not too positive. He used to be a great hitter for them, a great shortstop, showed some power, especially when he played in Colorado. We'll have to see on that particular. And then I'm going to pronounce this guy's name wrong. Mike Y, we'll call him. He's the most expensive bat. He's one of their better bats on the season. He's a lefty. Should be leading off for them tonight. So I do like the San Francisco Giants more than I like the Colorado Rockies. That does not mean I won't get exposure to certain bats from that team, but that's just how I'm looking at it right now. So let's talk specific bats. I've already talked about a lot of bats I really like, which is obviously your Ramirez's, your Lindors, your Freeman. We just talked about Brandon Belt. But outside of that, some one-off bats I really like. First and foremost, Nelly Cruz versus a lefty, man. Don't we just always play him? That should be the rule. But he's facing Dallas Keuchel tonight. +1, he's facing a lefty. He just mauls them. That's kind of the bottom line there. +2, he has faced Keuchel 45 times already in his career. He's 14 for 45 with 6 extra base hits and 5 home runs. So all good numbers there. I do really like Nelson Cruz. I'll be having exposure to him all over the board tonight. I talked about Conforto. Basically, anyone that I mentioned in those stacks can also be played as one-off bats, so keep that in mind. But a first baseman I do want to mention is Anthony Rizzo. He has good career numbers versus Chad Kuhl. Chad Kuhl, not a very good pitcher in general, but Rizzo on the road here. The downside is, okay, so let's start with this. Let's go with that game. I think Schwarber, Ian Happ, and Rizzo are all in play as individual bats. I refuse to stack this team. I've been burned time and time again, even with high Vegas totals. They have a high Vegas total tonight in Pittsburgh, but Schwarber and Happ, good, I guess, pricing on them. Hopefully you pick the right one. It's just in general, this lineup has been very bad in my opinion, but I think all 3 of those guys for Chicago are in play as one-off bats. I will mention I do like Andrew McCutchen tonight at $3,200 if this loads up for us. So Andrew McCutchen, anytime he faces a lefty, is in a good spot. He faces Corbin tonight, kind of get you that extra bat to help your NOLA lineups. But Andrew McCutchen, like I said, he was on an absolute tear for a good minute there. Had an 0 for 4 last night. Price $3,200 has come up a little bit, but still a good price on him in my opinion. I think that's very reasonable, $3,200, especially when he's facing a lefty. I will mention I do like Austin Meadows almost every single night of the week because he's a very good hitter. But $3,200 versus Tanaka in New York. I think Tampa Bay is an underrated lineup. We got crushed by them. Well, we didn't get crushed, but Cole couldn't handle them last night. So what makes you think Tanaka can? I don't know. But Tampa Bay in general, but Austin Meadows here, I do really like him as an outfielder. I do like, if you want to talk specifically games that have high totals, Houston has a high total tonight. I don't like stacking them at all, but Carlos Correa at $3,000, one of their better bats in a very reasonable price tag there. I do like him. I like Michael Brantley at $2,900, and I also like Josh Reddick at $2,400. Brantley, again, another underrated bat I think you can focus on. And then last but not least here, let me clear this out for you guys. At shortstop, we've been seeing for the Dodgers over the last couple of days when facing a lefty, Chris Taylor's been batting like 3rd. So $2,700, I think that's a great spot for him. And then on top of that, you can go with AJ Pollock, who's probably 4th or 5th when they face a lefty. Both those guys, high projected total tonight. Going to get you that late slate or late game. I like both those guys as one-off bats. And so that really wraps it up. I'll give you guys a quick recap here. Again, in terms of pitching, Nola for cash games, also going to get exposure in tournaments. Ian Anderson is kind of my number 2 here at $9,000. Tournament only, and then definitely tournament only. Sean Manaea facing a very weak Seattle team that can't hit lefties, possibly. So 2 out of 3 definitely, possibly that 3rd there, Manaea. And then in terms of stacks, I mentioned my favorite are the Mets. I also like the Cleveland Indians, the Atlanta Braves. And last but not least, if you're going to be playing that Colorado-San Francisco game, I will mention I like the San Francisco Giants, particularly left-handed bats, the most. We talked about some of my one-off bats. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys. If I missed anything or if there's some bats that maybe were in great spots that I didn't talk about, please let me know in the comments down below. Let's put this together as a community. Let's try to win, especially when we come off a loss, man. Let's kind of talk it out. Let's get back on the right track here tonight on this slate on Tuesday. But in general, that's the main slate for Tuesday, September 1st, 2020. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in here. You can help support us. If these videos are helpful, we make no money on this. I'm putting in a lot of time and a lot of effort to create this content, so I'd really appreciate if you guys give it a like. More importantly, if you guys subscribe to the channel, that would be super helpful. I'd really appreciate that. Outside of that, thank you guys again for hanging in there with me. Good luck tonight, and I'll catch you in the next video.